All right, so our next question about the economy is for the left side here. We are going to talk about economic development. What's my left? Oh, the left. That's good. We'll move the podium all the way over there. Can somebody get on it? Okay, it's about economic development. So there are many different ideas out there about how to develop the economy and create jobs. One popular idea in Arkansas is to do that with government incentives. Talk about that current method. Do you think it's good, bad? Where should we go from here? We'll start with Randy Alexander.
When I was in the legislature, one of the things that we voted on was to give quite a bit of incentive money to Big River Steel to bring it to the state. I don't particularly like that approach. I'm uncomfortable with it, but I voted for it the first time because the first time we were authorizing a study. And I have to be cognizant of the fact that a fairly large majority of Arkansans voted to do this, to provide this money for incentives for different programs. Now, when they came back with the study, it looked to me like a terrible idea, and I voted against funding it. But the incentive, I think we put way too much stock in that. I think Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin has the best analogy I've heard. He talks about making a cake, and the incentives are the icing. But the problem is, in Arkansas, if the cake's no good, I don't care what kind of icing you put on it. The cake's not edible. And we may have some money to throw at incentives, but I really think what's more important to people wanting to start a business is the business climate. And that's made up of the tax structure, that's made up of whether or not you have tort reform in the state. That's made up of a lot of different factors. And I think we need to put more emphasis on that. In addition to whether or not there's income taxes and how likely you are to be sued, you know, one of the first things that anybody moving, and all of you have probably experienced this, if you're going to move to a new community and you have school-age children, what's the first thing you check? You check on the quality of the schools. Unfortunately, in Arkansas, except for Northwest Arkansas, you're much more likely to find a bad situation than you are a good one. And that's something that I think is playing a major role in preventing people from relocating to our state. So to me, it's just oversimplifying the issue to say, well, we'll give you this many $1 million. You know, I remember the discussion about this. We were going to give Big River Steel $20 million, and you know, they were going to keep some of it, but they were going to pay $500 million back in less than 2 years or 3 years. I don't know what it was. Folks, if any of you out there would like to give me $20 million, I'll pay you back 5 of it tomorrow. That's not a big deal. So I think we overuse that, and it's going to be much more important going forward that we have a business climate that makes sense. And the other thing about taxes that affects that, you know, anytime we decide we're going to pass a tax or not, we're making a choice over who gets to spend your money. Do you get to spend it, or does the government get to spend it? Who do you trust more to spend it in ways that you think will be beneficial to you? And when you spend it, how's the impact of you spending it going to have on the economy as opposed to the state spending it? I personally think when individuals control their own money, they are a lot wiser about how they spend it, and we get a lot better outcome. So incentives are probably a necessary evil to some extent in this day and time, but that should not be our focus. That is a very, very small part of what it takes to build an economy.
Yes, sir. So incentives, a complicated tax code and tax structure comes to mind. I think about the current tax code, and basically revolves around these tax expenditures. That the product of that is you have an economic environment that is rooted in the pursuit of tax giveaways or tax expenditures that seems to, in the end, benefit a minimal amount of individuals or businesses instead of being able to benefit the public. So I would be for a tax cut overall, not just ones that go for individuals, or not a complicated tax structure that is so complicated that it only benefits certain individuals, and in the end, as stated, gives us this economic environment where if you're running a business, you're thinking, how can I get this tax write-off, instead of how can I hire more people because I'm being able to save more. So that's why overall I'd rather have a tax structure that is beneficial to everyone across the board. So with that, as was noted probably by everyone on this stage, you have more money in your pocket. So at the end of the day, that's how you create jobs, because you can be a part of that investing and entrepreneurship. You can be involved in the investing of whatever the next big industry is. You have more money, more freedom, and more liberty to do so. So that comes to mind. And on that note, I think about just the topic of crony capitalism and how that comes in with my opponent is Sue Scott wanted to take the ceiling off of grants that were given to these private corporations. This is your taxpayer money that goes to private companies. I can see the benefit in giving tax dollars to encourage business, but I think you can't take the ceiling off of those grants, because you're basically saying, yeah, spend away, which means more taxes for you. So we have to be very upfront in the beginning saying this is the amount that we would want to give away. Another thing as far as taxes go that comes to mind are fuel taxes, and I think we can all agree that we would be against the fuel tax. And I said, even before, thankfully, the governor made the statement that he wants to fund the highways and do that without raising taxes, without doing a fuel tax increase. And I said from the beginning I would be against a fuel tax increase. And unfortunately, my opponent, Sue Scott, said she was undecided on the issue, which I do not think you get to be a conservative if you're undecided about fuel taxes. Thank you.
State Representative Grant Hodges.
I remember when I was running a couple years ago for the first time, I was asked about this question. I said, I think these incentive packages, economic development initiatives are the big shiny object. They're what the politicians like to do and, cut the big ribbon, send out a press release and say, look what a good job we're doing. But in the Democrat Gazette just wrote an article, or a couple of articles I know Paul's talked about on his show, that when you dig into the numbers, they're really not a good return on our investment. That when you break it down, usually we're spending sometimes a couple $100,000 per job. So really it just doesn't make sense, and I think it's what a lot of the other candidates have said, that it's more about the overall environment of the state with taxes and education that really matters. I remember I sit next to a representative on the House floor named Mary Bentley, and she has a company called Bentley Plastics, and they make a bunch of plastic products, including plastic cups. And we were voting on one of these incentive things, and she said, what has the state done for my business lately? And that's just something that really stuck with me, because I sat there wondering, we're giving hundreds of millions of dollars to these giant companies, and I'm sitting there thinking, what have we done for the little companies that really are the job creators and the ones that drive our economy? And to Austin's last point, I was one of the very few representatives that voted against what I think was Senate Joint Resolution 16, something like that, which did raise the bonding for local governments. That will be on the ballot this year, so I encourage you to do your homework and see if you think it's a good idea that we raise the cap so that your local governments can spend as much money as they want, giving your tax money to private businesses. I don't personally think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Sharon Wood.
Thank you. Well, I want to give a big shout out to Grant because for voting against that SJR 16, because that is what my opponent is co-sponsoring with Senator John Woods, who I chose to run against for state senate because he was not a conservative. He was not a conservative for the Springdale area. And then, so Senator Woods and Senator Eads has now co-sponsored this bill that Grant is talking about raising the 5%. Right now it's capped at 5%, and it's a constitutional amendment, and they want to raise it to you know, who, God knows, I mean, it could go up to 100%. Everybody wants to say, well, you know, companies probably, businesses would probably not do 100%. Well, is that saying that we can trust our government? I mean, we've had reason not to trust them before. But I think, and to the question of creating jobs, I think less regulations is really what we need to focus on. I met a lady, like Isaac. I have knocked on a lot of doors and gotten a lot of earful because I'm knocking on pretty much conservatives, Republicans, and so, you know, they tell me the same thing over and over again. They do not want their taxes raised. Of course, they're just livid over the Obamacare, the private option, but that's another story here. But I met a lady that has been in Springdale as a daycare provider for over 20 years. She has 8 employees, and the government has, the state has started regulating her business, and she almost feels like she's picked on, but I mean, we got beyond that. Last year, they told her that the stove that she's been using is not good enough now. So, they told her that the one that she needs to provide for her daycare is over $1,000. She said, Sharon, I spent $1,000 last year. She said, I could have been doing other things. I could have given my employees raises. I could have done a lot of things in my business. When you're a small business owner, and like I said before, my husband and I own one. We've been small business owners since 2006. $1,000